Today's guest, owner, co-founder of FisherBlades out of Missoula, Montana. An amazing made in the USA story about a couple of dudes that grew up in the outdoors that brought their passion together for self-protection, self-reliance, patriotism, and just good old-fashioned cool stuff to market with this brand. We're going to dig right in with Mr. Fisher. We're going to talk about a myriad of things, from developing businesses in a really tight space to creating cool products to his time behind the Iron Curtain, rock climbing of all things, and a bunch of other cool stuff. I think you guys are going to dig this one. Let's get right to it. Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Well, hey all, welcome to yet another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. We've got Mr. Chaz Fisher. How do I actually say it? Is it Chaz?
Sure, you could do that if you want, but I'll laugh at you for it. It's just Chaz. It's
Chaz.
My mom calls me. I'm really Charles, right? So it's short for Charles.
And all right, I didn't know that. Well, my middle name's Charles.
Oh, okay. Well, when my mother's the only one who calls me Charles, and really usually when I'm in trouble. So when she's in a bad mood. so not many people call me Charles.
Well, you have come on today because you and your brother John have launched a new knife company. Are you getting your second year of business now?
Second year with the production knives. My brother and I started it maybe 5 years ago, with the intent of doing it, but I had some non-competes going on at the time.
Okay.
And so I couldn't get involved, and he doesn't really have production experience. So he just did handmade knives for a while. And then when I could join, I joined up, and we got the production knives kicked off.
And this is one of them. You guys are in the great state of Montana, and you're producing a handful currently. Today is the 16th of December, 2025. So if you guys are listening to this in the future, there might be some different products on their website. But this is just one of them. Really sturdy, fixed blades. I guess one would call them maybe a fighting knife. And you've got a handful of offerings. We'll talk more about that, but tell us about you a little bit before we dig into that. Who is Chaz Fisher?
Well, I'm many things, I suppose. For the majority of my career, I've worked in the outdoor industry, and I was a climber. I kind of came up climbing, rock climbing, and then later mountaineering, and got kind of my start as a working person. I don't know if I'd hesitate to call it a job, because it didn't feel like one, working for an outdoor school based out of Wyoming. And it let me go into the field, for a month at a time, because there were month-long courses usually. And then, I do 3 to 6 courses a year, and then I could go climbing the rest of the year. And so I would live out of my car and go climbing. So that's kind of how I started. And then when I became got more of an adult job within the industry, I started a company making climbing holds and climbing walls at the very beginning of that whole arc of development. Before there might have been 2 or 3 climbing walls in the country when I started it. And then by the time I left that company and sold it and left it, there were several hundred. And so we got to ride that wave.
You're talking like the early 90s then, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started it in late 89.
Okay.
And then left in 96.
That's cool. I had a guy who used to work with a carpenter who lives in Leadville, Colorado now. He's probably a couple years older than you. He helped build one of those places in my town. It probably was like 92. And people were like, what the heck is this?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So you grew up in Montana?
No, I actually grew up in Colorado.
Where?
I was born in the South. And then my family moved us to Colorado in 69. And my brother was born shortly after that, 69 or 70. At the beginning, we were in southern Colorado, a little rural place up in the mountains from Pueblo. And then later on we moved to Boulder, and then I had a bunch of years kind of all over the place, but then went back to Colorado as an adult. So I spent 25 years there as an adult
Okay.
before I left.
Tons of good rock climbing and bouldering, all just within feet of City Hall there.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was a great place to be a climber.
Well, so I did not know this about you. My brother did guide work at Yosemite and ran an off-grid camp at my younger brother Tom. So I never visited. It was super high-end A-frames, all off-grid. That was actually inside the park, but somehow privately owned. Maybe
Oh,
it
that's
was
pretty cool.
adjacent to the park on private land, but like, it gets 10 feet of snow to the road up there. So you'd have to like
Yeah.
snowshoe up and dig it out and stuff. Talk about your time climbing. I did not know that about you. That's super interesting. You still got the guns to prove it.
I don't know about that. Not the way I used to, but like I said, I'd work anywhere from 4 to 6 months out of the year, guiding or it was really an outdoor skills, outdoor leadership school. It's called
Like
Knowles,
Outward Bound. Which one was it?
National Outdoor Leadership School, or Knowles.
Okay. Knowles.
Yeah, a little bit like Outward Bound. Uh, but it allowed me, I didn't make great money, but it was certainly good enough to live out of my car, right? And in these different climbing areas. And so around the U.S., I went over, to a lot of climbing areas within the U.S. Traveled overseas for it, Europe, Australia, a few other places. And so when I was kind of done with that stint in late 80s, 89, I had the idea for the climbing hold company. And so I started that, and that did pretty well. Like I said, we really caught that wave early, and it did well. I learned a huge amount from it from a business standpoint.
So you were actually producing the different shape molds and
Hmm.
putting
Yeah.
anchor points on them to affix them to the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. So we made those little pieces called climbing holds. And really quickly, we realized we could also do some business building the walls. So we built walls. Nothing really big and commercial. Honestly, a lot of walls for pretty rich dudes. Some of them in the Chicago area got plugged into some of the highfalutin, high rolling guys there, and built, major walls for them in their homes.
That's
And
cool.
it did that for a while, but then went back to holds because it was just easier to manage. And then from there, I got pulled into the outdoor industry as a whole, in various roles. Marketing. I worked for La Sportiva footwear for a while. They made
Mm.
mountaineering and climbing footwear. And then from there, got pulled into another company to run it. I got recruited to run a company in Seattle. So I spent 20 years doing that and working for some other outdoor companies in Seattle. And toward the end of my Seattle stint, I got hired to turn around SOG Knives, because SOG Knives had gotten itself into not a great position after a series of leadership teams. And so I was part of that turnaround team that took it from doing not so well to selling it, because the PE firm that owned it wanted to sell it. And so we pulled that off successfully. It was a really, really good experience. Worked with amazing people there, but that was my first professional interaction with knives. I was a kid growing up in Colorado, so I loved knives anyway. But I had not worked in the knife industry until then.
Hmm.
And then after that, I got hired to run Boker USA. Boker's a German knife brand, and worked for them for a year, setting in place their growth plans for the U.S. And as soon as I left there, pretty much as soon as I left there, I teamed up with my brother.
That's cool. Go back a little bit here. You're talking about La Sportiva. I've known that company for years. What did you do there? That's pretty cool. There's a bunch. I've known you, and I've had quite a few interactions, but I never knew any of this stuff about you. So I want to hear myself.
I was head of marketing. So after I stepped back even a little before that, after my experience with the hold company, which there were two of them: Boulder Holds, as in better than bold holds, and Straight Up were the two companies I ran. After that, I started a marketing agency that I ran for a couple of years. It was my own. It was really lean and nimble. It was really just me, but I would outsource a lot of the labor, some of the creative, some of the production. And I did that because part of what I enjoyed the most at Straight Up and Boulder Holds was the marketing part of it. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll have fun doing this. And so I got a lot of clients in the climbing and the outdoor industry pretty quickly. And one of those was La Sportiva, and did some really cool creative work for them. And, back in this was before the internet was really a huge thing. It was there, but, nobody was really doing much on it. A lot of people didn't even have websites. And so I was their head of marketing. They pulled me in. They kept on offering to me to come in-house with them. And I kind of had to go in-house at a certain point because I was going through a divorce at the time. I had to buy the house from my ex-wife and couldn't get a loan. And, finally I was like, Jesus, I might as well accept their offer so that I can get my house loan. Mm-hmm. So I got rid of all my clients, went in-house with La Sportiva as their head of marketing.
That's cool. For those of you guys listening or watching, if you're not familiar with that company, especially at that time, that's like a super iconic brand in the mountaineering, rock climbing, camping, backpacking space. I've got boots that are crusty and should go in the garbage that I only keep because of the memories with them. But that's pretty dang sweet. So how did you, you've said so much stuff that I've got interest in. So this Knowles, where did you get the knowledge and experience to go out and work in these programs with the students out in the wilderness?
Well, I grew up in Colorado, so I grew up outdoors, doing my own stuff outdoors, backpacking and some climbing. Not a lot of climbing at the time, but enough so that I could rope up and lead a climb. And I took a student course at Knowles. I had heard about it. I had not heard about it before. I was at university in Louisiana doing Soviet studies. So like really unrelated to all this other stuff I do. So language and history. And so I did a lot of languages and history and poli-sci. And honestly, I was kind of fed up with it. It was, it's not really my vibe to be sedentary. And heard about Knowles, and I thought it'd be really cool. So I decided to take a semester off and do this Knowles course, and I did it. And I just knew almost right away, this is the kind of place I need to be. And I did well in the course. And the way that Knowles ran it at the time, I'm not sure how they do it now, but they pull their instructors from their students. And so I got invited to come and do their instructor's course. And so I did that. This happened took my student course in '84. And then took the first IC instructor's course that following spring. So that's how I started. So they give you a month of training, but depending on what your skill levels are, you could plus up on different skills depending on where you stand on them. And so that's how I got into it. And then I spent the next four years doing that.
That's cool. I bet you've got some pretty amazing memories from those years.
Oh, it was really formative. Yeah, I learned a lot about leadership, a lot about group dynamics. I learned to be a little bit more forgiving and understanding of other people's needs, while at the same time having to lead people through, some beautiful places, but sometimes dangerous places.
Where would you go?
Spent a lot of time in the Wind Rivers in Wyoming, but I also worked in the Cascades, worked in some little ranges down in Mexico. They had a branch down there. A bunch in Utah, in Canyonlands and similar environments in Utah. South Dakota. They did some climbing.
What was the goal for the student when they would pay and come to this course? What was the end state for them?
Well, kind of the first foundational set of skills they have to learn are just hard skills, learning how to travel through the mountains or whatever the environment was. And, stay alive and thrive, right? And those are pretty basic skills, and you can learn those easily in a month-long course. The rudimentary skills. But then beyond that, they were really big on leadership and what they call expedition behavior. So being a part of a team that it has some sort of an objective, wherever it is. It could be in the mountains, it could be the desert, it could be at sea, right? They had water courses as well, and learning how to be an effective team member and or team leader for those. It's expedition style stuff. It's really expeditioning.
That's cool. I,
Yeah.
I'm glad that we got to talk about this because oftentimes in this particular, I'll say this space, self-defense, preparation, longevity, health, fitness. There's a lot of gimmicky people or ideas that maybe are rooted in a good intention, but maybe like the person doing it has no clue. And you see that stuff in every industry. You see like at night, like well, you don't anymore, but TV. Remember like uh, some handyman tool, that was like going to make everything better, and no real plumber or carpenter would ever buy the thing, but
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody'd see it, and like some single girl would buy it for hanging pictures or whatever, some stupid thing. And I think in this space, there's a ton of products made with that kind of an angle where it's like, all the dumb kitchen appliances and stuff that a
Yeah.
chef would never use. So you've got years of experience in environments where your crap has to work.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of, I did not know that about you. I thought you were just a pretty face with nice biceps that was trying to sell knives.
It's all CGI, dude. So yeah, that was the Knowles thing, and then into the sort of corporate world. Outdoor corporate is not as corporate as one might think. It was pretty relaxed. I think it still is. But I learned a lot, and those lessons that I learned in the field working for Knowles, they really informed me. They still inform me in terms of how I work as a team. Even if it's a team of me and my brother, which is really what it is now. But I've worked with other bigger teams, and yeah, Knowles was a big part of helping me be effective in those environments.
Was your brother involved in any of that kind of stuff?
Not exactly like me. He did his own kind of crazy stuff. He's done fine cabinetry work. He's a sailor and
Oh, wow.
was a blue water sailor, so he went out solo, like in Pacific and
Wow.
kind of all up and down the Pacific, down into Mexico and stuff. So he did that for a while. He's a really big dual sport motorcycle rider. He and I both do that, but he's a
That's
bit
cool.
bigger into it than me, and he's done
How,
all sorts of cool stuff.
how did a kid from the middle of America end up sailing in the Pacific?
Well, we have some connection to the South, to New Orleans. I was born there. My brother finished high school there. Um, I finished high school there actually, and so it's close to the water, and so we got exposed to sailing both down there and with some family up in the in New England, and it bit him a little bit um, sharper than it bit me, and so
Mm,
he really got into it.
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's I've got a little bit of experience on a sailboat. My brother kind of fell in love with it, and we had a family friend that sailed on Lake Michigan, so he'd take us out. He had a 27-foot boat, and I did not love it. I did not love being
Yeah.
at the mercy of the wind and the waves. It was not my jam. I mean, I can see the romantic part of it, but I follow a YouTube channel. I forget the guy's name. I tried to get him on the podcast. He rebuilt a boat. Beautiful. It's like 5 years of the most intense boat building. I don't know, maybe it's a 35 or 40-foot vessel. And this kid sailed all across the globe. He's crossed the Atlantic multiple times alone. And so he finally finishes the boat, and now he's off sailing the world with this thing. And I look at it, and I'm like, I don't think I want to do that. I don't know about
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it's not for me either. I'm not much of a water guy. I can
Oh,
tolerate it, but I like firm firm earth or
yeah.
something, either
The
under my
ocean
feet
will kill
or,
you.
under my hands. Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
a lot more control, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you and he started this company. It's your last name. Uh,
Hmm.
and one of the things that's important to me is this bit.
Hmm.
And apparently it's important to you because you guys put it proudly right on the label. So how hard is it to start a brand like this in the US and actually like make a dent? I've been self-employed 26 years, but I want to kind of dig into that a little bit. I'll just prep what I'm looking for here. Here's some examples. Man, I don't know why this shit costs so much, or why don't they make that
Hmm.
here, or why can't you find a good XYZ made in America? Just talk about any of that kind of stuff.
Well, I think that to get there, let me talk about a few other things. So we haven't talked about my martial arts or, combatives experience. We can later if you want, but I have a fair bit of that led me to the point of,
If you want to dig into that first, go ahead. Yeah.
okay. So, both my brother and I have a lot of outdoor experience, hunting and fishing and just general outdoor stuff. And so that set us up for that. And um, yeah, as a kid, I did martial arts. I mean, I was caught up in the whole Bruce Lee frenzy and all that. So I did it as a kid and then kind of dropped it for a while I was doing outdoor climbing, knolls stuff. And sometime in the 90s, mid to late 90s, I decided to get back into it. I'd always wanted to do Wing Chun, because of Bruce Lee, and had never really found a school that resonated with me. And I did finally find one in the Denver area. And so I went into it full bore. I trained 6 days a week there, and and I've been doing it since. So I've been doing it for about almost 30 years now. And in that process, it was not just Wing Chun. I did a bunch of other stuff. I did some non-Chinese kung fu stuff, and so I had a lot of ideas about both armed and unarmed combatives um, that I was kind of itching to express, and they specifically with blades, right? So up to the point where we started FisherBlades, I had a lot of needs that I wanted to satisfy for outdoor knives, hunting and just general outdoor, and I had needs that I wanted to satisfy for self-defense blades because there are a lot of blades out there, and there are some amazing blades, really good ones, really completely sufficient for the job at hand. It's not like there was just it's not like there was some glaring need for it, but I had the need. I had my own specific preferences that I wanted to satisfy. So
Mm.
when we started FisherBlades, we had three pillars that we wanted to stick to. One of them was purpose first design. So you talked about it earlier, how there are all these gadgets and bullshit products out there that don't really uh, meet any true needs. It's just created by some marketing team usually, and and we didn't want to do that. I had seen that, and I saw it in the knife world. When I got into the knife world. But you see it everywhere, as you pointed out. So purpose first design is incredibly important to us, and we start every process. I'll recap them. So the purpose first, made in USA, and small batch production, and we can hit all those, but they are all sort of tied in together for us. The purpose first thing is extraordinarily important, and it has bearing on the whole price thing that you were talking about. So if we have an idea for a knife, if I have an idea for a knife, I'll think about it for a while, and I'll think about what it should be and why it should be. And if it keeps going long enough, I'll write a little statement. I will sit down and write by hand, what is the purpose of this knife I have an idea for?
Hmm.
And and I'll show it to my brother, and he'll rip it apart because we each do that for each other, and we'll make it better. And then from there, we design the knife. And every decision we make on that knife design, every single one, if it doesn't if it doesn't serve that purpose of the purpose statement of the knife, we're not going to do it. Um, there might be times where we would make a decision that is aesthetic, but really only like color, for example. And I can give you an
Okay.
example of how that happens. So the amount of work and time that goes into conceiving of a knife and uh, uh, defining its purpose and then doing all the design and development work is it's a long process. It can be long. It's a lot of work. And so that combined with the made in USA or not at all idea, and that just comes from us being, we're patriots, my brother and me. And I want to I want to help my fellow Americans. I don't have anything against anybody anywhere else necessarily, not out of hand. And I don't mind them pursuing their interests as nations. But I come from America, right? I want to support America and Americans. And I won't get too much into the whole made in China thing, but they can make some great knives. But why would I support guys, jobs in China when I could support jobs in the U.S.? And so that was part of why we took that made in USA position. Yeah, that's the Beckwith Covert. You had the FS earlier. So, and then small batch production has to do with quality control, really, and it has to do with design iterations. If we see something in a knife that we design, we're like, oh, damn it, we missed that little thing. We need to make a little change. If we're sitting on 10,000 units, you know how this works, right? If you've already designed something and you make 10,000 units of it, well, you're going to sell all 10,000 units before you produce the newly designed thing.
And
And
if you don't, then you're good at going bankrupt.
exactly. So we wanted small batches so that if we wanted to make changes to our product, and we have, we're more nimble and able to do that. So all three of those things actually combine to, obviously to create the product that we have, but it's pricing too. All this stuff is made in the U.S. with U.S. materials to the extent we are able to do it. We've used some German steel in the past, but we're going more and more to U.S. steel. But you cannot make a knife in the U.S. for the same price as you can import a knife from China for. It's just impossible. Those guys have, first of all, the big knife companies, they have knife manufacturing facilities over in China where they will on spec make 40, 50 designs of knives. The knife execs from, big knife brand A will go over there and get presented with these designs and say, oh, we want this one, that one. We don't want those. That's how a lot of these big brands get their knife designs. They're made by some team in China that is just cooking it up. And they are not purpose first. I can guarantee that. They don't know outdoor. They don't know hunting. They don't know self-defense. They are just making shit up.
You see that with tons of hunting knives. I've got a knife that was given to me when I was a teenager. It's a folding hunting knife. Camillus is the brand. Leather sheath. It's something you'd see like a dad in 1960 have on his belt, with the little leather flip top. But it's really nice knife that's probably 75 years old, I bet you. And I use that for caping game, and it's just like my general purpose hunting knife. But it was made by dudes that probably skinned 1,000 deer, and so like the way it fits in the hand. And I've tried to find, because I don't want to lose it or ever break it, so I've tried to find like a cheaper knife that I could toss in the sack, and I've never found one that feels just quite as nice. Which is silly because it's such a simple thing, but you go to the store and you look in the like knife cabinet and you're like, who the hell like made any of these? Even that's cutlery stuff for the kitchen too. It's like whoever made that's never chopped a damn onion or
Exactly.
or anything. Like that's so bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, we're not the only people doing this. Like I said, there are some great knives out there, and I have a lot of admiration for them. I like a lot of them. I've got knives that are part of my favorite knives collection that are not my knives. They're other people's knives. And so I'm not trying to say that just doesn't exist out there, but that's what we decided to do, is just do the best job we could do at kind of bringing those three pillars together in a product offering that would be useful for people. And as a consequence of that, you can't, even for a fixed blade knife, which is generally less expensive to design and produce than a folding knife, it's just really hard to have. It's impossible to have pricing that is competitive with China-made or even Taiwan-made knives, because they don't have that process, and they get economy of scale by making thousands and thousands of knives in a pop rather than hundreds in a pop.
There's never something for nothing either. And the part that I think we all forget, is that if I can go to Walmart and buy it for half as much, somebody got paid less to make it, and you might not care. I mean, there's plenty of things I'd rather buy I don't even want to say how much my truck costs. I'd rather buy it for half as much, but that meant that the guy at the factory's not making a living wage and all of those
Yeah.
things. And it costs a lot of freaking money to live in the US.
Yes, it does. And, we have, I'm not a big fan of government regulation of business, but we do have some that make some sense. We do have some environmental controls. You can't just dump your waste in a river, right? You can in China and get away with it, more easily than you can here. And so, and you have protections for workers. So I think that if, and everything is a trade-off, right, for every one of us as consumers. If I could buy a U.S. made iPhone, I'd really try and do it, but I bet it would cost 3 times as much, which is pretty expensive for a phone, right?
Sure.
So, I can't buy a U.S. phone as far as I know, at least not one that works as well as my iPhone. But when I can, I choose to support U.S. companies making stuff here because it supports U.S. workers, like you said, making a good, presumably a good living wage.
You brought up a good point about some of the environmental stuff, and oftentimes I do some work with some of these outdoor companies that don't oftentimes align at all with like the gun stuff that I do, right? They're like, oh, okay, you're a dude that does some stuff out of doors, except you shoot guns. Like our people all, are tree huggers. We smoke weed. We love frickin' fish and widespread panic and camping. We don't love guns and that kind of stuff. So there's like some political divides, but like, sometimes you get in like the Second Amendment side of things, and it's like, I don't want to say F the environment, but it's like, oh, like let's kind of back off of that a little bit. Nobody wants a steel mill in their backyard. I've got family and friends from all over the Pittsburgh area and other such places, or Detroit, or places where by me, Milwaukee or Rockford, Illinois, that were these huge industrial centers where things like DeWalt tools or Porter Cable tools or stuff like that were made. Nobody wants these things in their backyard, but then
No.
we're happy to stick these huge smokestacks in China or wherever, but then we complain, why isn't it made here? It's kind of a strange thing.
Yeah. I don't think it's incongruent at all to, I'm a conservative. I'm not crazy on the conservative scale, but that means to conserve. And part of that is conserving the environments where I do my stuff. And, I hunt, I go outside, I don't want that place, those places fouled. I want there to be game for me to hunt. And so, I don't think there is anything inconsistent about having moderate conservative values and wanting to protect our environment at all.
Heck yeah.
And
heck yeah.
And so yeah, when I look at, and this is not, I don't want to bash China, during this whole podcast, but those guys have a lot of things. They do a lot of things that I just don't support. I don't support the semi-slave labor. I don't support what they're doing to the Uyghurs, regardless of what sort of threat they might be. I don't support how they treat their environment. I don't support the relationship between government and and the people, right? I just don't think it's a healthy way to be. And so, that is also what drives our made in USA or not at all position.
Hmm. There's some very predatory business practices too, where I'm sure there's already somebody that's like, oh, these people are buying these. Let's take a look at one and re-engineer it for 20 cents on the dollar.
Oh yeah, yeah. We found some counterfeit versions of that Beckwith covert.
I
Within
believe
six
it.
months of launching it, there were counterfeits being made.
At least once a quarter, somebody sends me a video, and now that AI is becoming much better at whatever AI does. A couple years ago, you could mimic somebody's voice overdubbing or not, however it's done, and it would be me talking about this amazing product, and I'm like, whoa, that's crazy, that looks so real, selling, some widget that I don't know anything about, and every one of them is just some knock off of a nice, like Radian Weapons from Oregon, used to be from Washington. They make a charging handle for ARs that's like used by 50% of the AR builders, and they're expensive. I've sat and watched the guys tapping the rivets in by hand that put them together, and they use a lot of disabled veterans on the assembly line, dudes in wheelchairs, tapping parts together like this is a good thing. And so now they got companies ripping them, and it looks like the same thing. And then you read like the comments, like I put it in the gun, pulled the charging handle back, and the whole thing ripped apart. It's 39
Yeah,
bucks instead of 79 bucks. Like you get what you
yeah,
pay for.
yeah,
The the regulatory side of things nobody likes until my state just passed a crazy law that every or every city will need to go out and like look at buildings like this, analyze the height of the building, and look at whether or not fall protection needs to be on the perimeter of the roof. And then they need to inventory how many of these buildings have skylights. This is the whole state of Illinois. And then they need to create a database of that information, give it to the fire departments and to the police departments because guys are falling through skylights. And like that seems crazy until it's your dad or uncle that fell through the
yeah,
skylight. Like laws are
yeah,
cool, but they can be onerous too.
yeah, yeah. I think you just need to. It needs to have some common sense attached to it, and often we don't have that common sense in some of our state laws and even federal laws. But uh, you know, it's just regulation is not inherently a bad thing.
Change gears a little bit. How the heck did you end up in college studying Soviet Union?
Well, it was Cold War, and they were our enemy, and know thy enemy, right? And so, um, I considered them the Soviet Union and its ideology, a real threat to freedom in the world. And I was idealistic. I mean, shit, I was 18, 19 years old, and my idea at the time was, hey, I'm okay with languages. I'm okay kind of learning about. I can grasp the basics of what made the society what it is by studying their history and their in political science. Maybe I can make a difference in the world in countering what I viewed as a really serious threat. And so that's what I did. I studied that for 2 years, and then later on I thought I'd go back and finish it, so I put in another year, but it didn't stick. I just couldn't
Hmm.
sit down for that long. But uh, so yeah, that was the idea behind that. And there were kind of two paths in front of me, two easy paths. One of them was just to go work for the State Department, or to work for one of the three-letter agencies. So those were kind of my two options, and those they were available to me. But when I started really looking at them and looking at what it meant for me and my lifestyle, it just did not match with what I liked to do all the time. I would have had to sacrifice all these other things, hunting, doing outdoor stuff. I just, I'm more of a person of action than a person of sitting at a desk.
Sure, I get that. Well, those three-letter agencies have some action guys too.
They do, but look, I was 20 when I decided to stop doing that. I didn't have my vision of the future was not necessarily uh, as informed as it might be now.
I dig it. Uh, Change gears a little bit. Uh, How old are you?
62.
Yeah, like you look incredible for your age. When you told me that, I was like, dang, man, you've got veins like, ropes in your arms. And I'm sure you've spent your life doing fitness related things. How's a guy get to be 62 and have garter snakes in his biceps? What do you got to do that? What's
Well,
what's
first of
a
all, like I said, it's a deep fake. So it's just a filter on Zoom. Um,
hmm
like I said, I've been active. I was a climber for many years. That's a very physical, upper body intensive thing.
hmm
And Kung Fu and unarmed combatives, that it's good for you. Keeps you healthy
hmm
and fit.
hmm Do you practice anything like yoga or stretching practices?
No, not regularly. I do
No.
some strength training, just to kind of keep my strength going. And I think as I get older, that becomes a bit more important.
What's
I think
that
you
look
got
like? How often? How much?
2 to 4 times a week. I'll do quick hard workouts, moderate and hard workouts, and full body, upper body, pull, push, legs, core,
When
that
you
kind of
say
stuff.
quick, you talking like 10 minutes, an hour?
I can be in and out in an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not that quick. That's a pretty significant workout.
Yeah, but that includes warm up and cool down and
Okay. Okay.
pausing between some sets. I'm not real big on cardio, doing my own cardio. I do that when I'm out, in the mountains. So I don't really do a lot of that in the gym. I don't,
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that activity. Jiu-jitsu gives me my heart gets up for an hour or two, but
yeah,
I get bored
yeah,
like on a machine or
yeah,
something.
yeah, I do
It's
too.
was this a family lifestyle? Like dad,
No,
brothers? Would you no?
no, no. My parents were not physical at all. They, they were, my dad is passed now, but my parents probably had some good genetics in terms of, their physicality. My mom is 82 now, and she's in great shape for her age. She's in great shape probably for any age, and she's not incredibly active.
Okay. But you got some good genes there. You can capitalize on the good genes and you can waste it too.
Yeah.
I will say, can you buy your t-shirts, by the way? Do you
Hmm.
sell the t-shirts? So I think when Chaz made these shirts, I bought a
You are
hundred
really going to
thousand
call me that, aren't you?
t-shirts. Oh yeah. You gotta, this is kind of what I do. You find a thing and then you just put your thumb on it and you just keep
Yeah, I know.
kind of,
I know.
yeah.
I can see that.
I have six little brothers. You're not my little brother, but, uh, so,
I get it.
so, I think you specifically ordered like a large shirt with small sleeves because I put them on and I'm like, boom. So I dig it. So if you guys want to accentuate your biceps, and they're cool, they're nice shirts, but you got cool designs. Did you do like you got freaking
Hmm.
Godzilla with twin blades in his hands on that shirt? You got the one with the
Yeah,
unicorn.
we call this Bladezilla. Yeah, I do the shirts. I don't necessarily do all the art for it, but I do the art direction for it.
So you get a
And
little picture in your mind's eye.
and I'll sketch it out or get some references that for style or whatever, and get it done by an artist.
Do you, do you have an artistic side? Do you play instruments at all or anything like that?
I play guitar. I learned guitar late in life. I think I started learning it when I was maybe 55.
Oh
I'd
wow.
always wanted to, and so I got a guy to give me some basics in person for a while. But then a lot of it was YouTube, and so I still try and play every day just to keep pushing my skills up. And what's great is I'm not very talented in it. I'm talented at some things, Music is not one of them. So what I love about that is that any gains you make, any progress you make in something that you're not talented at is a reflection of the hard work you put into it, right? You're
I
not
like
just
that.
riding on talent. And so that's one of the reasons why I really like guitar is that I, uh, I know that any progress I make is because of the work, and any stall or, plateau that I'm in is because I'm not working hard enough.
Who's your favorite guitarist?
Probably Townes Van Zandt,
Hmm. All right.
or maybe Blaze Foley.
All right. Says a lot. I thought you would have said some Grateful Dead shit.
There you go with that thumb again.
Uh, my sister moved to Leadville, Colorado in the early 90s. My nephew Kanan, that works for us here, was born up in Leadville. And so I spent a lot of time in the early 90s up in the high country there, skiing at uh, Copper and a
Hmm.
little place called Ski Cooper, which was always a favorite.
Hmm.
But you kind of, at that time, I ran into a lot of people that kind of left the city and were just like up there living in school buses and stuff, with wood
Yeah,
stoves in them. So it was,
yeah.
I'm just poking fun. You said something that the way you said it makes me think that you've talked about it and thought about it a bunch. Don't ride on talent. Uh, is just comment on that some more. Talk about that some more. Why is that important? Why was that important enough for you to even mention that?
Well, I had some talent as a climber, and some of it is just physicality and body type. But I have some sort of an innate um, predilection to it, and so I did really well right off the bat when I first started climbing, but I never really worked at it.
Hmm.
And I was young enough to not know any better, and I thought, oh, I'm really good at this thing. I have made this happen. And I
Hmm.
didn't make shit happen, really. I just was enjoying the benefits of of that talent.
The the
And
cosmic congealing of your genetics and
yeah, for whatever
yeah.
reason, right? And I don't take credit for it. I'm not bragging about it or anything. Everybody, most people have a talent for something or many things, right? And so, but I was climbing in Czechoslovakia as part of a U.S. Czech climbing exchange in 1986. And those dudes there, this was at the tail end of the Iron Curtain, thing. Uh, they were hardcore dudes, these climbers over these Czech climbers. And I was pretty young, right? I was 22 or something like that, 23. And I remember, we went out and climbed with these guys all day long and for a couple of weeks. And one of them made a comment to me that really, really struck home. He said, Chaz, you're a good climber, but you're lazy.
Mm.
And nobody had ever been that blunt to me. And it the implication was you'd be better if you weren't lazy. And so it really made me think. And I'm like, wait a minute, is he right? And so I started looking at the people around me who were good. And because and I was around a lot of really good climbers of the day, not just over in Europe, but, here in the States, like the top climbers. And I watched how they trained, and I watched how they climbed and how they made their magic happen. And I realized that dude in that Czech was right. I was lazy. And so it really made me think a lot about work and putting work into getting good at something. And so I started to work at it. And I mean, real basic stuff for the time. But the gains that I made from just working hard were eye-opening to me, and it really completely changed how I look at skill acquisition and pursuing excellence in a thing. And it just completely changed my outlook. Before I was just immature, and I'd found this thing I was naturally good at. I thought, oh, I'm good. Well, I wasn't as good as I could be. And once I put work into the equation, really cool things started to happen. So I got a lot better at climbing, for one thing. But then any other new skill that I decided to pursue, I would apply that ethic to it. And so, uh, when I re-entered the martial arts, I had a lot of experience in the climbing thing, and so my skill acquisitions there were greatly um, optimized because I knew how to work.
Hmm.
I had a better idea how to work, and as I've gone along, and I'm still modifying it, right? I still figure out how to work better, smarter, and harder, so that my skill acquisitions, whatever they are, whether they're just hard skills, even just like basic handgun administration stuff, right, or more advanced stuff. Um, Look, we build neural pathways by repetition, and we can get a jump start on it by having talent, but you're never going to really be good at anything unless you get those repetitions. Michael Jordan was a phenomenon, right? Everybody
Hmm.
knows it. He was naturally talented, but he wasn't Michael Jordan because he was good at it. He was Michael Jordan because he was good at it and he worked at it.
Train like an animal.
Exactly. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, so it affected, all of my skill acquisitions, it really helped.
That's
I still believe in it.
That guy must have had a pretty good rapport with you to say that to you, and you must have been fairly mature to not get. I would have probably got pretty angry. Lazy is not something I take lightly. I mean, I've fought with somebody before for telling me I was lazy. Like, so, and at that age, I mean, that's a big deal. That's cool that he cared about you to waste the
Yeah.
energy to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. His name is, I don't even know if he's still alive. Bauslav Mrozak was his name. I'll never forget it. He really helped me out.
I had a I had a guy, similar story in the sense of somebody a lot smarter than me took a minute to say something to me. This guy's passed away. His name was Gary Wizawati. I've told this story a few times. I'm a smart ass, but I was a lot more of a smart ass. Gary was a recon Marine in Vietnam. I side note, had the honor of carrying his casket, and in his pocket at his burial was a list of all the boys that died under his command in Vietnam. He carried the list with him his whole life. From time to time, you'd see him dig it out of his pocket, and he'd just like finger this list. Nobody knew what it was. He told me one day, and it was just this worn out piece of paper. This is the kind of dude he was. He was like 6'3". After his time in the Marine Corps, he was a special education teacher in grade school. So just a big heart. He slams his hands on my shoulder one day, and he had like a pencil Marine Corps mustache. He was in his 70s, still like 250 pounds, 6'3". And he looks down at me and said, "Young man, your sarcasm is no substitute for wit or humor." And like just looked at me and said nothing. And I was like, like looked up at him like, oh shit, and told me like just do better. And he he didn't have to give me the time of day. I worked with him, but I was like, oh shit, okay, I guess sometimes these jokes get old. I got to shut the hell up. But that's cool when things like that happen.
It's very cool. Yeah, it can be completely transformative in life.
You should look that guy up.
Yeah, I should. Now that they're all free over there and everything, or comparatively free.
What time of year was that?
That was late summer,
Okay, so it was
1986.
good weather. What an amazing experience
Yeah,
spending that kind of time over there in that time. I bet you came home and people were like, "What was it like?"
yeah. It was the Iron Curtain, right? Not many Americans had spent time behind there.
What was it like? How was food and all that stuff in those years?
It was rough, is what is, you could, it's, like out of a movie, right? It just seemed first of all, everything seemed gray, even though it was late summer and there was sun and everything. Prague was just the grayest, kind of most dismal city I had seen in Europe.
Hmm.
Um, Food was sort of hard, not that hard for us because we were Americans. It was a little team of Americans there, and we were being treated to their best, and so they did their best to make sure that we found restaurants that had good food and all that kind of stuff. But I did get a chance to see what the locals would, how they dealt with life. And it's like you've read, those there are supermarkets. There were no supermarkets. The markets barely had anything. Shelves were had sparse products on them. One of the things that stuck with me is that even in the high-end restaurants they would take us to, the bathrooms in those restaurants didn't have toilet paper. You had to bring your own toilet paper.
Just because there just wasn't enough resources for them to pay
Yeah.
for such a thing for a stranger.
Yeah, yeah. The presence of the Soviets there, and they were present. We encountered them. They were the locals were incredibly resentful, but really kept it suppressed, because any expression of resentment or disapproval or animosity toward those Soviets, obviously wasn't tolerated, right? And so they were reluctant to talk about politics or stuff like that, period. But in public, they wouldn't. They would not speak disparagingly about anything having to do with like the lack of food or whatever. Privately, they would, but they'd look around and make sure nobody was listening, and whisper about how fucked up the situation was there for them.
That's crazy. We've got a couple family members. My uncle married a girl whose father was doing some spying in the 70s in Czechoslovakia. And then Kanan's, most of his family's from Germany on his dad's side. He has I believe they wrote a book about it. He worked clandestine missions for like 20 years and then ended up here in America for safety. But people have no clue what the heck,
Yeah.
was going on there. And that's, like the distilled essence of what happens when that kind of socialist, communistic bullshit gets to blossom into its fulfillment. It's nasty.
Yeah, it's really nasty. It's I don't wish that upon any people, but I do wish that Americans and maybe Westerners in general were still mindful that that existed. I think a lot of younger people. I've got 23-year-old and a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old, and they know about it because I've told them. It's important to me to keep knowledge of that alive. But their peers, a lot of them, they don't know shit about how bad those systems were, and I think that that's a dangerous thing.
How did that shape you going forward when you came home? Had you been to Europe before that?
I'd been to Europe, but only mostly Western Europe. When I took a year off after high school and worked for a while, went over there for about 4 months just to work on my languages. And part of that, I went into Germany and Berlin and East Berlin. And so I had seen it, but kind of, it's not really the Disneyland version of it. But, Checkpoint Charlie in 1982 was, 1981 or two was, it was even then it was kind of a tourist attraction, right? So it was not nearly as impactful as like that Czech trip later. But so I had seen it, and I'd been over there, and it made a huge impression on me. But probably the biggest one was that whole Chaz, you're lazy thing, because that really kickstarted my a completely new outlook to how I pursued excellence.
What do you think would have happened if you like didn't have that experience up on that mountain with those boys? Would life have been profoundly different without that one little interaction?
I mean, I think it might have, right? I mean, like I said, I had some sort of base talents in a few things, and I might have just convinced myself that I was all that just because of that, right? And that just doesn't, that's a very short road, right? It only takes you so far. And I've been doing, as you know now, Wing Chun for almost 30 years now, and I'm still learning, right? Because I understand that the arc of that pursuit, it just keeps going. As long
Mm.
as you put into it, you'll get out of it. And so I think that the learning that really simple maxim of, you get out of it what you put into it. If you don't learn that, I think you end up at these dead ends in life. And they could be career, they could be relationship, they could be, whatever your passion is, and then you give up on it. And I have seen that in people that I teach, right? Because I teach. I had a school, Wing Chun school, for a long time now, and
Do you
even
still
though
have
I'm
one?
well, I just recently gave it the one in Seattle over to one of my most senior guys, and
Very
I'll be
cool.
starting a new one here in Missoula. I've been working on it, so I'm going to start that school pretty soon here.
Very cool.
But even with somebody as their guide who understands that, a lot of people, they don't get the lesson, and so as soon as they reach a plateau or a challenge, they give up and they
Mm.
stop doing it. Like, good grief. There's just so much more potential for people than they realize. And I could have been one of those people that just gave up on that thing, whatever it is.
It's a common thing.
Yeah.
I think when you talk about a martial skill or something physical, nature gets a say so too, right? Like my left knee
Mm-hmm.
hurts, my right elbow hurts, my freaking right hip hurts. And it's like those things start stacking up. So it's easy to make excuses or just accept it as like, this is just the way it is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to kind of
To
pivot and come up with new ways of doing the thing.
to quote that, can't remember what movie it was. That kind of that funny comedy thing. Never give up, never surrender. It's like that's my motto. I'm not going to do it. I'll die trying, working.
You apply that to business?
Yeah, I do. Of course, there's a difference between being stubborn to the point of self destruction, right?
Mm.
You could come up with a plan for a business, but I mean, there's that maxim too. No plan survives the first encounter in the battlefield, right? And then
Hmm.
you have to adjust, and you have to be nimble. So the same thing applies in business, and uh, but it doesn't mean you stop trying or stop working at it. It just means that you adjust how you're trying to achieve it and how you're working at it and what you're training at. And it could be in business, it could be in martial arts, it could be in your field, right? And
Hmm.
I've played around in that field too. And um, if you're trying, if I'm trying to acquire a skill and get achieve some proficiency in it, and it's not working, well, I'm not doing the right things to get it to work.
Hmm.
It's not that maybe I'm a dumbass, and I suppose that's possible, or just I am incapable of it. But I try not to indulge that
Usually
feeling.
those are not the reasons though.
They usually aren't, right?
Yeah.
I'm reasonably coordinated. I'm reasonably aware, and all those things. So I should be able to get proficiency in something. And if I'm not, it means I'm not trying the right things to do it. Maybe I'm not working hard enough, working smart enough, doing the wrong thing to work at it. Maybe I'm taking bad advice. Who knows? But there are a lot of variables in it. But I'm not going to give up if I've decided I want to be proficient or excellent in that thing, including business. And
It's
we've made some adjustments. We've made some sort of battlefield level adjustments to what we're doing so that we can better achieve our goals.
How is it growing a brand now? I started in business when you still would sit down at a coffee shop with the guy from the Yellow Page company who'd, sh open up the book and show you, okay, you can have this little thing that nobody will see, or I
Right.
can sell you this whole, it's only $1,000 a month, this
Yeah.
like that. I did yellow pages and I did the newspaper ads and I did radio ads. I don't think I ever did any TV. I did billboards for years, so you've got that whole genre. I mean, when I was a kid, 18, 19, I'd go to the print shop. I didn't own a computer until I was in my, geez, 26 or something. And I'm not very computer literate. I mean, I use them, but it's not my thing. I've got, I've got notebooks everywhere, but I
Yep.
would go to this local printer. The guy since deceased. His name was Dennis Bisco, chain smoker. He had a bottle of Jack Daniels behind the counter, and I'd ask him to lay out a flyer, and it would say, like, my business name on it, and some bullet points and phone number, and he'd basically type it up like on his big computer screen and print it up, and I'd pay like 8 cents a page or something. Not even. No, it was like a penny a page. And then I'd pay extra and he'd trifold them for me. And I'd get 100 of them and I'd go jump out of my truck and I'd go put them on people's doors, trying to drum up some construction work. So how is it now growing a business in this space this kind of stuff, man? You can have the best freaking product in the world, and to get your eyes on it, it's so noisy out there. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think the principles are the same as back when you were doing your flyers and I was doing, my equivalent of that. The Yeah, you make a product, you put what you can into it, you have a good understanding of what it's for and who it's for, and you need to communicate to the people who you think might want it, the product or the service, right? And the differences are that the way that you communicate has changed, obviously, right? Print ads and print stuff, forget about it. Just doesn't. It's. I'm sorry. It's done. At least for what I do, it's done. And for the most part, I'm not placing ads. I haven't placed a single print ad. I haven't done that in decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly haven't done it for FisherBlades. Uh, I think that one of the bigger problems, apart from okay, the means of communication has changed. It's digital now. It's social media. It's influencers. It's YouTube. It's Instagram. It's also personal interaction, right? We try and interact personally with people at little shows and stuff. Um, People's attention spans are shorter,
Hmm.
almost for sure. And like you say, part of that is just chicken or egg, I guess, right? The noise is deafening.
Yeah.
Uh, the communication, the cadence of communication, like email communication, I mean, we all know like how crazy that is, how many emails we get every day, trying to pitch us on something. So I think it makes the challenge of standing out harder. You can't just have a good product and you can't just have a good tagline, or headline or tagline or whatever, or slogan. I think you have to um, I think it makes it more important to be your true self with your brand. Like whatever the personality is, the kind of core identity of your brand, uh, it needs to have some authenticity, and that's a become a word that I kind of hesitate to use, right? Because it's overused now, but it's true. Um, Back in the day, you didn't have to do much to come across as authentic. You just made your flyer or did your little print ad or whatever you did, and you talk about your product, and people are like, oh, that's a good product, must be a good brand. Well, now, because of all the noise, because of the shorter attention spans, uh, there is so much bullshit out there that
Hmm.
to for a person to find a brand or a product compelling, it needs to stand out. And the cool thing is that I think that they're cool for me, because or for anybody who's trying to start a business, is there's so many people out there who are afraid of letting their own personalities come out in their brand, because they don't have the confidence in that. or they're afraid of being judged or who knows what. They just copy everybody else. And so
Mm.
that just becomes part of that noise, right? So I'm not saying it's all you have to do is just be yourself, because there's a lot more to it. Um, for one thing, if you're yourself and you're a dick or it's not compelling, well, it's not going to work, right? You have to be likable on some level as a brand and as a person. And so having integrity and honesty and having, hewing as close as you can to truth, it will do you well. But being unafraid to be yourself as your brand, right? And in my case, the brand is me and my brother, and so it's a little bit easier. But if you work for a bigger company and you're part of a team, you need to really define what is that brand's identity, what is its personality, and not be afraid to take a few risks. And we'll take risks all the time, actually, because of the risk of being judged badly by your market. And so I think, as a long answer to your question, and maybe I didn't answer it, but I think um, finding your identity and understanding what it is, being unafraid to show it to people, and take the risk of them not liking it.
This sounds like you're trying to get a chick to go on a date.
It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
You don't get the goddamn date unless you go up and talk to her, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And let her see some of you.
You know what I find funny, and I don't know everything by far, but I get these people. I just actually had a couple of girls, very attractive. They're legitimate. It's not from another country. They're from here in the States. You get stuff like this all the time. Let us help blow your brand up. This is what we do, blah, blah, blah. And I don't often even give them the time of day, except they were invoking a relationship with several people I know that are really successful, like on a huge, huge level financially and other ways. So I screenshot this message and I shot it to one of them, and I'm like, what do you know about these people? And he's like, yeah, like biggest waste of 6 months and 50 grand like ever in my life, like and like it's funny though, like the perception of things. You said like it was easy to uh be looked at as being legitimate years ago. I remember, so I came up as a carpenter, and so when I went on my own, like you'd talk to guys, and there was like three factors that meant you were real. Do you have a shop of some kind to like put your junk in? Are you in the yellow pages? And do you have a vehicle with like lettering on it, or some kind of signage? And if you had like the signage was, if you had that, just like you were like in business. And like it's pretty easy to fake stuff, right? I can tape an email, I can be like, look, I work with this company, and it's you can go a long way fleecing people, and you're not even, that probably not even malicious. These girls probably think that they really know what they're doing, but that seems to be like no different than those dudes sitting at the coffee shop 30 years ago trying to sell you the $1,000 a month yellow page ad, like
Exactly.
we've,
You're
we've got
exactly
the
right.
answer. We've got the answer.
Yep.
I've got a lot of friends in various businesses like you, and we sit and talk about these things. One of them right now, his name's Bobby, consummate entrepreneur. He's behind one of the highest quality rifle brass makers on the planet. He founded that company, and now he's doing something in a completely different space, cacao. He's importing cacao and roasting it into this delicious,
Oh, that's cool.
nutritious beverage. So we're helping him a little bit on that. But like he's had these meetings with like these different marketing companies, and he'll call me and we'll bullshit. And I'm like, so they told you that you and I know way more than they do? Because like that's what it sounds like. Like, all right, here's what you got to do. You got to get like a lot of people to know about your product, and you got to get them to buy it. That's what you got to do. Like, oh, really? Okay. Like that sounds
I
great.
never would have thought of that.
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah, I was lost until then. How is it? Um, launching something like this, though, in this noisy space. It's got to be daunting when you open your computer up or your phone and you see all of these different products. How do you not get defeated or beat down? Like, damn, we got a big uphill battle. What do you do to combat that?
Well, it was daunting in the beginning because we launched with that single knife design, that Beckwith covert that you showed a few minutes ago, and uh, it was kind of a weird little design, right? It it didn't break absolutely new ground because I mean a knife is a knife and it's the oldest tool, or maybe the second oldest tool of mankind, right? Um, but it is a little kooky looking, and so I knew it was a risk, but I also knew that it did what I wanted it to do, according to that whole purpose statement. And I knew that I'm not alone in in wanting that set of attributes for that tool, right? Because of all the experiences I've had in the martial arts and the shooting community. I knew what people kind of generally wanted. Now, is it everybody's knife? No. Different size hands, different styles of using the tool, and all that kind of stuff. But I thought there were enough, so I was willing to take the risk, and it was a risk. We put a lot of money into that first production run, and didn't get return on it for quite a while. So that money was tied up for a long time. Um, I guess I just feel confident that by following that principle of hewing as close as we can to those three principles of ours: purpose first, and batch small batch production, and made in USA, that we stand a very good chance of producing something that enough people will want that it'll keep the enterprise going. And so far, it's proven true, right? And the more success you have with it, or the more it works, the more confidence you have to keep going forward.
What's the biggest challenge?
Um, the biggest challenge for us is now that we're growing. We've got 4 knife designs that have been put out there, and we've got 7 more coming for 2026, which
That's
is
awesome. That's
big.
a lot.
Yeah, it's more than doubling, right? Uh, the complexity of managing that whole process from concept to design and development and production. It's I wouldn't say it's complex, but the complexity compounds when the more designs you have, and the more you got to manage the timeline. So managing all that is challenging. I think that I think even since we have started, the whole communication about it is changing, at least in the knife world. And I don't know about in your shooting world, but uh, we got a pretty good start at the beginning by choosing some people on YouTube to help us talk about the knives, reviewers basically. And I think that space is changing. I think that I don't think it has the same weight it might have before. So being able to talk about our knives to people, it's that message is dulled a little bit by using the YouTube influencer thing that we kind of launched ourselves with. So understanding how people are getting their information, and how they're gaining confidence to buy the stuff that they want, that's a challenge. It's hard to develop a clear picture of how that's happening, and I think it's changing a little bit.
That space is evolving so quickly. There are so many amazingly talented. I hate the term influencer, content creator. It's also freaking vapid and
Mm-hmm.
inane.
I
But
agree.
um, I'm watching this kid last night. He's been doing YouTube for 15 years or something. Brilliant. For fun, he took um, what kind of car was it? Doesn't matter. Carbureted engine, and created a uh, fuel injection system. Okay, no big deal. Go to the parts store, buy a bunch of shit. No, he took off the distributor, freaking engineered on his computer and 3D printer parts to make a device that fit into where the distributor went, to spin a little gear for a little thing to read it with a magnet, and then wrote software to figure out where the pistons were, all the shit that's been done before, but nobody makes this. So he just made all these parts and then took fuel injectors off of a vehicle, took pressure sensors and O2 sensors, put it all together and just wrote software. And he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just like taught himself as he went. And then the thing worked. I'm like, wow, this is freaking amazing. I was entranced watching like 5 videos late at night just recently. And he's got like 800,000 followers and they're very simply filmed videos. They're funny. And I'm like, this is like amazing. And like, there's so many people like that have these great followings and just, super niche stuff like that. I like that mechanical stuff, but there are so many people like knives, guns, cooking, anything, right? Where you're like,
Hmm.
man, this person does not have any idea what they're doing, but cool
Hmm.
music and lighting and shit. And so it's like I did I have been sharpening things my entire life from axes to saw blades, and I made a video on a simple way to sharpen a knife with sandpaper, and because people have it. And so I just, describe it and show you how to do it. And the knife's really sharp. And the amount of comments like, or input that you're a fucking idiot. Nobody uses sandpaper in the knife
Yeah.
making process. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, you've never been in any type of a facility that grinds anything from a lawnmower blade
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
freaking
That's
utility
sandpaper.
knife blade. Right, right. That's all they're using is sandpaper. But
Yeah.
there's 1,000 comments about what a moron. So it's a strange way to communicate to people because even if you totally know what you're doing, you can be a moron, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can be a hero, depending on like
Yeah.
how people choose to perceive the message.
Well, think about it. We were talking earlier. I was talking earlier about, authenticity of brand and, brand identity and self and all that. You can tell now, or I can tell now. Um, I look at somebody on YouTube that's doing stuff with knives, and we haven't always worked with the most authentic identities with knives, but those are the people I try and find, like that, like the dude who you just talked about with the engine and making all that cool stuff. That sounds like authentic to me, right?
Yeah.
And genuine. And so I try and, I'm not like a big YouTube surfer, and but I do it because it's, important to what we're doing with FisherBlades. And when I find somebody that has that ring of truth to them, that's why you and I are talking, because I saw
Mm.
your stuff on YouTube. I'm like, this dude is cool. This dude has some shit going on that I like. And I started paying attention to you, and that's when I reached out to you. And it's been great to have the interactions that we've had. And I do think that people like you and people like the dude with his crazy injection software shit that he made, those are going to be sought after by the consumers on YouTube, the information consumers on YouTube. And
Hmm.
so aligning yourself with other authentic people to talk about your stuff, that's going to be what's important. And that's part of what's happening that I've seen happen in the knife YouTube scene, is the whole rise of gimmickry
Mm.
to
Mm.
to buy these channels. They have their gimmicks, cool graphics on screen that don't really serve any purpose, and they're not really talking about the attributes of the knives. They're just bullshitting, or they're shilling for somebody because they're getting paid a lot of money, right? And I like to have faith in general faith in people to make the decision that what they're consuming, whether it's a product or information or whatever, that they're going to ferret out truth and authenticity. And so, um, so yeah, I think choosing well who you help to amplify your message online, that's one of the new challenges. And so that's what we're trying to do.
I've noticed it's in, you look at folks talking about mass media or Hollywood or Disney. They're pushing a narrative, or it's it's all. I just saw something, a little blurb from a podcast, and this excerpt, I've seen it before. The expert is saying everybody our parents looked at on the nightly news was like a CIA operative. So I'm like, oh, wait a minute, like that's a little out there. So I start doing a little Google foo, and his argument was all of these documents exist for you to read. Well, cool. I want to read them. Like I'll bite. So like they're talking about Walter Cronkite in particular. The only
Mhm.
documents available that I could find actually state no Walter Cronkite, and this wasn't Wikipedia, but like the FBI quoted him um, saying like one little blurb, but in fact, all the information was that like Walter Cronkite was not part of any of this shit. Anyway, you hear it, and like hundreds of people share it, thousands of people, and people send it to me. They're like, look, because I'm like the anti-conspiracy guy. Like, I'm
Mhm.
always just like, prove it. And I mean, I believe all kinds of nefarious stuff exists, but you can't just say things. Anyway, it seems like now, I just saw something this morning. In Australia, people are doing this new type of flooring. So it's like this like way of telling the story that it's like far enough from home that you can't really validate it. And you go read the comments. I'm Australian. Nobody here does this. I'm also Australian. Nobody does this. And it's all AI. You've probably seen some of these videos where like it's a room and some workers come in and it's like two times the speed and they pour like gravel on the floor and then it's like this
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's all fake, right?
I've seen those. I saw them
People
recently.
send them to me all the time because they know my construction background. What is this? And I just respond, it's fake. Like there's not an
Yeah.
oak tree under a living room floor, right? Like it's not, it
Yeah.
doesn't work. But these channels, you go click, this is what's interesting to me. You go click on the channel and it's from Singapore or Philippines or Sri
Yeah.
Lanka, and it's got 17 million views in the last 30 days, which I know equates to a certain dollar amount. And it's like this guy is literally using the ignorance of the human animal to
Yeah.
like it's billboards with big tits or big juicy
Yeah.
cheeseburgers on a billboard, and they're just like and we just
Mm.
eat it. So it's very
Yeah.
hard to
It
like
is hard.
have a real conversation when that's the
It is,
audience.
but here's what gives me hope. I vacillate
Good.
between
I like
being
hope.
yeah, I'm trying to like hope. It's not my natural state, but uh,
I don't believe that.
I vacillate between being cynical and pessimistic about what's coming and being hopeful. But what gives me hope recently, and it's probably is, I have hope because I think the next generation, I think that their bullshit detectors might be a little bit better. For sure,
Mm.
my kids' bullshit detectors are better than mine. I recently, not too long ago, I saw this video on Instagram of a dog, Malinois, jumping out of an airplane with a parachute kind of thing, right? It was like first time a Belgian, first time a dog, on its own jumped solo, right? And it had this video thing, right? I'm like, oh my god, that's amazing, and I fully bid on it, right? And I sent it to my daughter who's 19, and I said, check this out, isn't this amazing? And she wrote back immediately. She said, Papa, this is AI.
God
And I mean,
dang it.
she knew right away, right? I'm like, oh, damn it. I got fooled, right? So the next generation, I think, is a little bit more attuned to it. It's certainly more attuned than I am, and so I think that there's a lot to be worried about with AI. Obviously, there's just
One pushback on that. What that's creating now is everything's AI. That shooting in Australia that just happened,
mm,
people all immediately thought it was fake. And it's like, well, no, there's dead bodies, man. Like that's like so now
yeah,
it's almost like believe nothing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's a risk, right? For sure. But I am hopeful that people will figure out ways to discern at least some truth out of what's happening and some bullshit out of what's happening, and not just be completely fooled and or completely doubting and rejecting everything they see is untrue. I hope that we'll reach a point where we find some stability in that.
I like that. I uh I appreciate the amount of work you and your brother are putting into launching, or not launching, but now doing this product line. I know how much the things I've done take out of the family, out of the pocketbook, etc. It's a huge undertaking. Uh, Appreciate you taking the time to come and talk. I ask everybody that's on the podcast, if you never meet the people that listened or ever run into them in life again, even in a platform like this, what would you leave them with?
You ambushed me with this, so thanks a lot for that.
You're welcome.
Um,
If I told you ahead of time, you'd be like writing down platitudes that were bullshit so that you could sound smarter than you are.
uh, I guess what I'd leave them with is, well, kind of what we started with. Learn how to work hard for what you're trying to achieve. Um, don't be afraid to be yourself. And if you've got a need for a tool, um, don't get don't get swindled by the whole gimmickry of the world, and understand that everything comes at a cost, right? Like, touching on the whole US thing. If USA made is important to you, well, there's a point at which it becomes not important enough to buy the thing. And I understand that. But Jesus, develop some principles and try your best to live by them. And and hopefully, if you're buying a knife, that we make a knife, a tool that we make that tool for. Hopefully, you'll consider us. But I'm not trying to swindle anybody. If our tools aren't right for them, they're not right. And uh, I don't know. I don't know if that's really what you're looking for, but
I'm looking for you to be honest. No more of the
yeah,
freaking lies, pal. No, I think that was perfect. I can
yeah.
say I'm not an expert in everything, but I've spent my life using tools. Uh, I I don't believe owning a thing makes you an expert on the thing. Folks will say to me, "Well, I own lots of guns. I could own a P-51 Mustang or an F-16, and it doesn't make me a fighter pilot." Uh, these are quality. They're quality tools. I have put them in the hands of a handful of men that I respect, look up to, train with, etc. And everybody agrees that they're super high quality. The details of the things like the holsters, or even the stuff like the fact that you use discrete carry concepts clips. Like anybody that knows about that stuff, there's a bunch of um, different things that a guy could use, and like your stuff, even the packaging. I'm not trying to turn this into a big sales pitch about them, but even the
Hmm.
packaging and the way that you box the things is all shows a great level of thought and care, and all that stuff adds up. I mean, at the end of the day, does a guy care how his pocket knife was packaged a year later? No, but it all means something, and it shows. So I personally have no problem recommending your product to anybody. If folks listening have questions or anything about our experience with them, I've got some videos of us stabbing these things through steel trash
Hmm.
cans. And that's always kind of like a fun thing I will do with a knife. And people say, well, that's a dumb test. And to me, I'm just having fun, as well as seeing if the blade will deform in something that's much uh, sturdier than a person, or clothing or
Hmm.
something like that. So they're
I,
super durable.
I appreciate that. I actually do have one final thing, and I think you'll be on board with this, given what I know about you. And I'll reinforce what you said. Having the thing, the gun, the knife, whatever it is, the cordless, driver, does not make you an expert in using that thing. And with something where you're with a tool that is made for lethality, you owe it to yourself, the people that you love, the people who count on you to get the training needed to become proficient in that thing. And we sell things that can kill somebody, and somebody can die in a minute and a half if you get them in the right place with our things. And those are big consequences. They're heavy consequences. And being able to do it and keep yourself safe and the people that you love safe is really important. So my sort of final point that I would make is get training in using those things, get good training, become proficient and responsible with it. We're really, really big on that. I'm big on that.
How do people find you?
FisherBlades.com.
And I believe on the website, there's links to social media on there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, we're FisherBlades on all the socials.
Spell it, please.
FISHER blades.com.
Let's see a double gun pose.
All right, let's gun show. See
Do
you.
it. Oh, nice. I wonder if I could get you to do it. You guys that tuned in, I hope that you got some value out of it. I sure did. Everybody's got a story to tell. Almost always, if you just listen, you'll hear some things. And what I have found in the decade that we've been doing this, but in my whole life, almost everybody that's got success, achieved success in certain areas, and success means different things, right? It's not just money, it's not just fame or accolades, but when you win enough over and over, you hear the same things over and over. And I kind of like one of the things that I look for when I'm listening to folks is, there it is again. There it is again. Like these little like bricks of truth in the foundation of like people's lives. Like you can't, like you said, hard work over and over again. Like I've never met somebody that's ever done shit that doesn't work their butt off. And so I think that now especially you younger dudes listening to this, there ain't no cheating. Get out there and kick some ass, and do consider purchasing one of these blades. Be well. Don't be dickheads. Tell somebody you love them. And if you guys dug this podcast, please do like, share, subscribe, all that good jazz, and we'll see you soon.
Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com.
Well, that was a lot of fun. I heard and learned a ton of things from Fisher that I did not know about. This podcast was brought to you by our good friends at Supervel Ammunition. Supervel stands for super awesome. They make all kinds of amazing ammunition. And of course, one of our brands, Ignis Lux Coffee. We've got several different roast profiles. And if you're watching this right now around the holidays, we've got the holiday blend, which Bennett just roasted this week. I look forward to seeing you guys out at a class, carrytrainer.com, carrytrainer.com to check out classes. And as always, keep your guns wet with Gunfighter Gun Oil, our in-house lubricant that Kanan himself packages in bottles just for you guys. We appreciate you guys watching. See you soon.